It's been a while since I added the first lot of operators to my Rainbow Six Siege remake, and the first time around I didn't go into much detail as to how I added them. Well, not as much as I should have anyway, and it seemed like you guys would have wanted me to, which is why this time around I'm going to be letting you into my step-by-step process as we add 4 brand new operators to the game, using a combination of mods, data packs, and even the first fully custom models. These ones were pretty crazy. I started by obviously picking which ones I wanted to add, which was actually a tough decision because there's so many to choose from. Because remember, Ubisoft has been updating this game for years, adding new operators and reworking old ones every couple months, leading to there being a total of 76 operators in the game, which is nothing compared to my measly 15. But after a lot of deliberation, I eventually landed on Ela, Lesion, Jaeger, and Grim. I've got my own reasons behind why I picked each of them that I'll explain when we get to each of them. But for now, it was time to move on to the second phase of planning, the ideation phase. How do I want these operators to work? Well, luckily for me, Ubisoft had done most of that thinking for me. I just had to copy them, right? Except it wasn't that simple, because by now I'm sure you know I like to add a Minecrafty twist onto all of my features. So that's exactly what I did, twisting the way each of the gadgets operated to make them a bit more of my own, and fit in Minecraft a bit better. And the most obvious twist of the bunch was Grim. In-game he fires a canister of bees that somehow ping the enemy players, and apparently they're techie bee drones, but I'm not buying it. But the way we ping enemies in my remake is we give them the glowing effect. So I thought there was another forgotten mob that I wanted to revive for the— oh, it was already added? 8 months ago? Okay, we'll be backporting the Fireflies from the 1.21.5 drop. I figured they made more sense to give the glowing effect instead of cyber bees. And this sounded like exactly the kind of job for my custom mod. If you didn't know, I've recently started modding in features for the remake. Just a few as of now, but this would be a perfect addition. All I had to do was download the Firefly texture and make it a custom particle within the mod, which was actually pretty simple. I just made it use the Endrod particle factory, which means it covers the glowing and the way they move. All in all, I had to write like 3 lines of code. Next up, I was going to need the items to make it work. A crossbow. And an arrow. This was also pretty simple as I'd already made a function for the crossbows and arrows. When one is fired, they're given a tag, and when it's detected to have hit the ground using the in-ground component, it will run a function to check for the tag again, which then branches off into Ash or Capitao. And now, Grim. I could also safely copy this smoke grenade logic, which spawns a marker that constantly spawns particles for about 10 seconds before getting killed off. And then all I had to do was check for defenders within a 4-block radius of the marker and ping them. But now I think it's time to address the elephant in the room you've all been screaming at. It was only while reading the wiki and scripting this that I realized he can actually make projectiles bounce as well. I don't know, I haven't played him, which is a feature that would have fit perfectly with one of the upcoming operators, but I'm completely out of time to change it, so I'm putting this one on the back burner for a bit. Okay, it's gone. Moving on to Ela's Grismot Mine. Now we're really getting into the good stuff, the first custom model. I created the first version of the model inside of BD Engine, a program that lets you manipulate block and item displays similar to how you can do it with Axiom. I just prefer BD Engine because it was what I used for all the other operators, gadgets, and barricades. Anyway, this time I decided to do something a little bit different. I used custom player heads instead of full blocks to make the model, which is something I've started doing recently while detailing because I noticed that when scaled down, they keep their pixel consistency much better than full blocks. Which, if you don't know what I mean, here's a demonstration. Here's 2 slime blocks. This is a real one and this is a player head. Obviously, at this scale, the head looks a bit out of place, but when they get scaled down, that oddity is reversed. Now, the full block looks out of place, and the head looks a bit more in place. And when you're dealing with gadgets as small as they are in R6, it's obvious it's the better choice to use player heads. But in fact, none of this matters because after doing all that, I decided I wanted to try my hand at modeling for real. inside of Blockbench. But why? The item displays looked good and they're easy, right? Sure, they look it, and when you're using something like Axiom, they are. But for me, I needed to move them with commands, and the only way to do that is to move and rotate each of them one by one, which certainly adds up. So it would be a whole lot easier if it was only one. Anyway, I'll talk more about that when I add it to the game. Right now I'm modeling, so hush, a master is at work. And just like that, I was done. This one was the easiest of the bunch because all I did was remap the textures onto the cubes to make them pixel consistent, meaning I kind of cheated. But that's okay, we texture the next few for real. Here's the block display one and the Blockbench one side by side. You can see I stuck pretty close to the original, but you'll see me get better and worse as this video goes on. Now to add her to the game. I mentioned this a bit while making Grim, but when I add an operator or gadget, I try to see if there's any code from the others I can steal from. And just so happens there's a perfect candidate for this. The Skulk Alarm. Throwable? Tick. Sticks to walls? Tick. Custom rotation? Tick. Activates on proximity? Also tick. So all I had to do was copy the code from that and give the player a few seconds of nausea and blindness when triggered. Moving on to Lesion. Now he actually already had a BD Engine model that I made months ago while working on the last set of operators. But because we've since changed course, going for a bit more realism, I decided to change it. Also ditching the old name that would have been Poisonous Dripstone, changing it to Poisonous Mine. Because, well, we got rid of the Dripstone. Anyway, I whipped up a new block display model in about 3 minutes, using iron textures instead of mangrove for the bottom part, and candles for the little needles you can see on the top. I also flipped the bottom part and shrunk it to add the top part that breaks when landing. And with that done, I converted it to a Blockbench model, this time just using the real Iron Blocks color palette and copying it as best as I could, to make it smaller and more compact. And instead of these legs that come out, I added a second layer to the edges to give it a bit more depth. All in all, I think I like this model much more than the original Mangrove one, though let me know what you think. Now we've got to add the fella, but he bugged me for quite a while. In-game, when you throw his gadget, it slightly bounces off walls and sticks to the ground, which was really tough to do with the current grenade system, which is why Lesion is the one who made me decide to make a mod in the first place, and fix the grenade system, adding the bounce multipliers and breaking surfaces, so I could make his X and Z axis bounce really low and have it not bounce at all on the Y axis. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about and didn't see me go through the reworked grenades, you can check them out on my last video, along with the working chalet map and a bunch of other bug fixes. Anyway, once I rewrote the whole grenade system, I could make a preset specifically for Lesion to break vertically and have a slight bounce horizontally, as I said. I could then swap out the closed model with the open one when it landed, spawning some braking particles to hide the switch. Lastly, I just copied a similar proximity detection system from Ela and made it so they have to hold crouch to pull the Lesion out. And with Lesion's model, I actually managed to speed up quite a bit from Ela, making it in about an hour. The same could not be said for Jaeger though. I spent a while on this model, and it's easily the most complex out of the bunch. To a fault. As usual, I whipped it up in BD Engine. This part was easy, but once I got it into Blockbench, my productivity really started to tank. This was the first model I'd done that wasn't a simple color palette switch, and I had to make my own. And on top of that, I sucked at it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's a crime against the pixel art community what I did to it, because this texture is made up of 2 different pixel densities, and is therefore pretty ugly. It reminds me of those old modern resource packs you'd see in 2015. Gross. But I don't have time to change it, not right now at least, and once I got it into the game, it didn't look too bad. My main gripe is still the texturing though. But enough self-loathing, I'm literally the GOAT. Once he was in game, I stole some code from the breach charge placements, that when the item is held it will check if there is a block directly in front of the player. If there is, it will get the direction they're looking and spawn the model accordingly. If not, nothing will happen and the player gets to keep their item. For the Jaeger specific part, it runs checks 1 block in front of the model, in a 2-block radius, which should stop it from triggering on the other side of the wall, something that the Skulk Alarm does, I think. It did at one point, which is a bug. All I needed to do then was to go through the affected projectiles, frags, flashes, ashes, arrows, you get the idea, and give them a custom tag that the model will be looking for. Once found, it kills only one nearby and then goes into a 10-second cooldown, stopping the checks during that time. And that's it. All that was left to do was to add the new items to the menu selection and give them lore. I did a little playtesting to make sure they, worked, and they did, so that's that. Now, obviously there's still a ton more operators to add. So let me know if you'd like to see another video of me adding operators, or if I should explain myself more in the bigger videos. And if you haven't seen the other operators I made, you can check them out in this video here. See ya.